Bro, which Sauvage should I get, dude? Is it still worth it in 2025? There you go. What's going on, guys? My name is Neve. Welcome back to AROMATIX. I sneezed taking out these bottles because of how much dust they've collected because I haven't worn it in a long time, except for one of these. Now, believe it or not, there are a lot of people that are coming into this space more recently, and the space is increasing. So welcome to the fragrance community. And if you know about Sauvage or you don't know about Sauvage, you found the right video. This is gonna put all hate and bullshit aside because there's a lot of bullshit about this fragrance that has quite literally worked for so many years and still maybe works, or maybe not. Sauvage, Dior Sauvage, come on, man. You boys remember what the fuck this was, especially in the beginning of this release. Citrus, ambroxan, synthetic, but really damn good. This was invigorating, refreshing, very bright, and it was strong enough to last through every single season. Dude, if you wanted to smell like cologne, you just wanted to smell good, clubbing, partying, whatever, you rocked Sauvage. When I was going to the gym, Sauvage. Night, Sauvage. Going for a walk, Sauvage. Taking a shower, in the shower, Sauvage. That's it. That's what it was. And Sauvage was life, literally. And that's kind of what became of the fragrance. I remember even a woman gifted me this as a gift. She was like, I smelled the fragrance, that was really good. It was Sauvage. But anyways, it was between Dior Sauvage and Bleu de Chanel. And for the most part, Bleu de Chanel was one of the first to kind of do the shower gel freshie. And this one took that and livened it up a little bit, toned down some of those ambers, and really capitalized on the more attention-grabbing and synthetic factors of it, but it worked. And this has gotten me so many compliments and it smelled incredible. But now we're in 2025 and so many fragrances have spawned since then. We got the EDP, we got the Parfum, we got the Elixir, and then lastly, we got the the Eau Forte, not Diddy Juice, Eau Forte. This one, I mean, it's creamy and white. Scent profile for something like Sauvage to begin with is relatively masculine, it's fresh, it's got some barbershop-y vibes to it with a heart of lavender drying down into something that has a lot of ambroxan and woods. So the mass appeal was very evident and very clear. The original one was relatively synthetic, being the one that was dosed up the most in the ambroxan and also those peppers. Peppers are very attention-grabbing because they smell almost, it's almost hard to pass up. They also project really nicely. This one being the most dosed up. After this one came out, came a more refined version known as the Eau de Parfum. The Eau de Parfum also came with a little bit of a higher concentration that kind of fixed some of the reformulations with the Eau de Toilette. And what that basically means is after some years, the Eau de Toilette concentration was changed in a way, or its performance, so it was rumored, it started to decrease. This was once upon a time very loud, very long lasting, and throughout the years, they started to kind of tone down some of its performance. Whether it was actual reality or just placebo, it was something that was the talk of basically the town and the community. Now, shortly after that, the Eau de Parfum inclusion did fix or seem to fix the longevity, but with the increased concentration, sometimes comes a decrease in projection because the heavier and more oils, the less likely it is to project. Now, this can be counteracted when you start to using a lot of synthetics or use more synthetics or some chemical compounds that in themselves can somewhat defy that logic. And this is kind of the case, because in itself, it has that synthetic vibe of ambroxan. But I really want to make sure you guys understand that just because I'm saying synthetic doesn't mean it smells bad. The note breakdown for something like this obviously is going to be relatively similar and consistent, but I did notice that this one goes a little bit more towards the ambery side of things, adding nutmeg and less so much on the citruses, which kind of toned down the whole synthetic vibe. I really started to enjoy the Eau de Parfum concentration, and during this era, I was a true believer of like, just give me, you know, the highest concentration. But I have to admit that the Eau de Parfum concentration gave me something that not only lasted all day, but projected as well. Sure, the projection wasn't as great as something like Sauvage EDP, but it also did something in terms of how obnoxious it smelled. I remember sometimes going in somewhere and I was like, I really don't want to be like too loud, etc. And I'd rock this and it would be just enough. And even in those other scenarios where it's like, I want to be loud, it also served the purpose for exactly that. So like with many other fragrances, the Eau de Parfum concentration serves as like the middle ground between loud and long lasting, and then also long lasting but not that loud. And I fell in love with the Eau de Parfum concentration. Now being in 2025, I personally, whenever somebody asks me what's a good daily scent or do you still recommend Sauvage, this will very likely be the one that I recommend. So we'll get to the bottom line nearing the end of the video. Shortly after the EDP came out was the Parfum, and this was the most sophisticated and refined and the least synthetic, if you will, of them all. Except with that came denser notes, came a denser scent profile and concentration, more longevity, but not really the projection that I personally enjoy. Now, I like a medium between obnoxious and, really good. And it really just depends on the scenarios. But in almost all scenarios that I wanted the scent profile kind of reserved, the Eau de Parfum did it. And when I wanted it kind of loud, the Eau de Parfum also did it. I just sprayed it over across a larger area of my body. And so with that being said, I found myself rarely, if ever, spraying the Parfum. Now, I purchased this one initially because A, I love to review fragrances and I love fragrance in general. I like to study them and I have for many, many years. And also B, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I work at a hospital. Maybe this will be good for like office setting, hospital settings. It's a lot more tame. And while that was true, it just didn't scratch the itch. And even then, I still was going for the Eau de Parfum concentration, just spraying it a lot less, like 2 to 3 sprays whenever I was going in. I was getting compliments, I was getting, attention. It was great. And not being that that's the sole purpose, but it just overall gave me the best projection and performance. And this is kind of a similar case to Bleu de Chanel, but we'll save that for another video. So with this fragrance, the scent profile is relatively consistent, except that synthetic vibe is also dropped a little bit more. And as it dries down, you get something that's a bit warmer, richer, and more masculine because of its inclusion of olibanum and also tonka bean. So it seems like a more naturalistic approach to a scent profile that was initially intended to come off as loud, projecting, attention-grabbing. And so the appeal of the initial fragrance kind of started to dwindle away as the fragrances started to progress, that is. And lastly, on the end of this spectrum, which completely just served as like a curveball, was Sauvage Elixir. And this, to be honest, in itself, I wouldn't even classify as a part of the whole Sauvage DNA, because this is where you start to go into like really taking the heart of what Sauvage was all about initially, but obviously not as easy to pinpoint, which is going to be this fougere barbershop-y DNA, stripping everything away around it and just turning it into a very masculine and spiced version of exactly that, the heart of the original Sauvage. So this in itself, I'm gonna say that I wouldn't even classify it as one of the Sauvages because of the fact that it's so different. It's so unique in comparison to these, at least to the masses. Do I see similarities? Absolutely, I do see the similarities, especially in terms of its backbone. It kind of takes something from the Parfum and adds a lot more of a richer licorice spice. It really develops a more focus in towards the lavender, the frothy nature inside of things, and focuses more so on that aspect. But this on its own, I think it's worth it. In its complexity, in its scent profile, I definitely think it's worth it. It's for the more mature crowds and that licorice vibe, the barbershop, it's very masculine and I personally believe timeless. Now we're leading into the last one that just released, which is called Sauvage Eau Forte. And there's a reason I have it in this size. It's because I don't believe this one is worth it and I did not enjoy it at all. Look, I'm not gonna shit on the fragrance just because there might be people that actually enjoy it. But for me, this is a completely different direction. And it's no surprise because Dior in themselves hired a new perfumer, MFK, who started to perfume a lot of their fragrances. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, his direction of a lot of the Dior fragrances have included a lot of resins. If you notice a trend in between like Dior Homme 2020, the original, the new reformulation, even the new Dior Homme Parfum, it's a lot more of this musky, resinous approach while trying to still achieve some of the originality in the Sauvage or the Dior backbone. So with this, that's exactly what's happening. There's a note of elemi, which you'll see the use of in the new Dior that MFK likes to use across the boards for Dior. It's almost like it's his stamp of the Dior DNA per his creations, if you will. And that's what happens with this one. So they use the elemi, they use the heart of the lavender from this, a little bit of those spices, except this one starts to dry down musky and woody. And what this one ends up smelling like is just spiced musk. And I'm not for it, man, at all. Initially, I was like, it's not bad. It's a little resinous, balsamic, piney, and woody, and then that frothy lavender. But as it starts to dry down, it just goes a little bit even more like, I don't want to say rancid. I really don't want to be insulting, but it goes too bitter for my taste, the Eau Forte, that is. I really tried to enjoy this one. It's just my personal taste. Now, if you enjoy it, continue enjoying it. But if you ask me today, is your Sauvage still worth it? I would simply answer it with this. With everything being said, there are really only two that I would personally say are 100% worth it. Dior Sauvage Eau de Parfum is absolutely worth it, boys. It's fresh, it's clean, it gets compliments and attention, and it projects, and it lasts almost the entire day. What's there not to be worth it? And also, it's been a long time since people have rocked this fragrance, so you'll likely stand out. Not many people are rocking this anymore. Just go and ask a crowd of like 50 women and ask them if they'd take this one, even over Sauvage Elixir. I'm extremely confident in the fact that they'll likely go for this. mass appealing, easy, all that good stuff. And with that being said, the runner-up, Sauvage Elixir, more masculine, it's still really good. And I personally believe this will be timeless, just as timeless as Sauvage Eau Parfum. So yes, they are still definitely worth it. And don't listen to the hate. Sometimes they just need the clicks. And guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna do it on the behalf of a reputable and very click-worthy type of fragrance, and it's going to be Sauvage. So it's fun, it's funny, but in all reality, this is the honest truth about Sauvage that a lot of people don't want you to know, or they just not don't want you to know, they just don't really, you know, touch on. It's easier to bash on these and get the views than it is to actually give them credit and get the views. So I wanted to kind of make a video and test this theory. Is it gonna get the actual credit and views based on the actual hype that it built, it achieved, it accomplished, and the notoriety that this fragrance line actually deserves? My name is Steve. Thank you for tuning back in Aromatics. Don't shy away from Sauvage. It's still really good. Make sure to leave a like, hit that Sauvage button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.